What's up, everyone? This is John.
And I'm Ellie, and we are LiquidHaus, and this is HausKeeping, where we talk about all the latest in gaming tech, what we've had going on.
Yeah, what we've been doing. And
as I just said, gaming, we really haven't talked about any gaming yet, but that will definitely be something we do going into 25.
Absolutely.
Well,
we're
anyway,
getting things going
yes,
here with
welcome
this show.
to another episode. Thank you so much for your feedback on our last episode, and then feedback, I mean, y'all like it. We like that you like it.
I know, right? It's like, I think it's working.
It's motivating to continue doing this. So, yeah, welcome. And we have some fun things to talk about. We've been busy in the studio. And so let's get you caught up.
So we're going to cover a few different builds that we've done in the past, I would say. I mean, with some of these ones that we're going to talk about, they've been built for a couple months now. And there was different reasonings for why we haven't been able to
cover them
on the show and stuff like that until now. But we're first going to get started with Project Blue, which was an awesome build that we did for an Intel activation that hasn't been posted yet, but we did get the green light to post the build.
Yes. So it was a 14900 KS activation back in spring of 2024. Sometimes there's a lot of red tape with these types of projects. And unfortunately, this was one of those scenarios that didn't get pushed through. So there's a water cooling 101 video out there that exists somewhere.
Somewhere in the ether.
That's not edited yet. So I'm going to see if I can't work my magic and get our hands on that, because it's actually a pretty informational and valuable video, I think, to add to our YouTube.
Yeah. So, I mean, in true LiquidHaus fashion, right? We wanted to do the tutorial a little bit differently than normal. So we used, the Yulbeast Atlas 2. Eric made a really awesome LiquidHaus edition motherboard panel version that we use for this build, and we've used in builds in the past, but we use an all open air chassis for this build, so that the tutorial and all the footage and all that stuff, you would be getting as much of an open view of the hardware, of the process, and from beginning to end, the whole thing. And
it was really actually the perfect chassis
for it really was.
A scenario like this, where you are doing like a tutorial based video. You can really see literally everything, because it's basically just an exoskeleton chassis.
Yeah. I mean, a case does and can hide quite a few things, especially when it comes to the water cooling aspect. There are people out there that will do a build and intentionally hide everything behind panels that, aren't normally visible. So, with that line of thinking, we wanted everything out and open so you could see the whole process. And, depending on how the future will unfold, there might be a chance where we can even come up with an edit of that video that we shot for them and maybe post it for ourselves. But
hopefully we can get our hands on something.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully if enough time passes. I mean, as Ellie was saying, it's the 1400 KS launch activation that we did for this. So, obviously we're not onto that anymore, but, in terms of water cooling, the generation of hardware doesn't
it's
really
indefinite.
matter. Yeah. So, we can.
That knowledge is still super valuable.
Yeah.
All of the information that's in that video is still super valuable. So I think that I'll see what I can do about getting our hands on it.
We could have used like a Z170 motherboard, like thrown it way back and done something like that, because the ins and outs of water cooling is not generation specific. So,
right.
I mean, that's the fun part about it, though. You can make an old build look really crazy and new and awesome, and no one would be the wiser, right? So, but with that, we used a lot of really cool stuff. It was in the Yulbeast Atlas 2 chassis. I wanted to talk about just a few things about this build, because, I mean, it really looks awesome. But one thing that we had a few guys in our Discord server, when we had posted the photos about it, they were like, hey,
what power supply?
What power supply is used on that? It's like, man, I forgot to take a photo of the back. So it's really funny that our Discord community is like on us about, like making sure that we cover every
all
base.
The details. Yeah, they want to know all of the details.
Yeah, they're keeping us sweating with that. But it's funny because the power supply that we use, the Asus Tough Gaming 1000 watt variant, they released this past year. And I got to say, in terms of like a stock power supply, the cabling that comes with the power supply. I would say these are probably my favorite.
So yeah, some of the best and most
Yeah,
malleable.
they're so malleable and they're so soft to
Yeah.
the touch. And if you were to do a bend in the cable and then change it up to a different build, it doesn't. It remembers the bend a little bit, but you can like basically straighten it out really easily. Like it's really nice to use. And in terms of like stock power supply cables, I would definitely say it's my favorite right now. We're going to be using a Tough 1000 power supply, a white one in a CES build, but we won't be using the cables with them. So I'm thinking we actually might use those white cables with the black power supply for builds that you can't see the power supply, but you would need white cables for. So
Yeah.
make the most out of them because those are really nice cables. But I did want to shout those out because it was a really nice power supply cable. And but I mean, all in all, the build was really fun. We utilized some parts that weren't so common. We wanted to use parts that we haven't used in a while, so we used
Like the
Phanteks.
motherboard. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm talking about the water cooling stuff.
Oh,
So
yeah,
like
yeah.
the Phanteks fittings.
Yes, yeah.
Those compression fittings we've had for such a long time, and unfortunately, Phanteks isn't carrying those anymore.
No, they're discontinued.
Which is a bummer though, because I did enjoy those fittings and they worked perfectly for the sleeving, as you can see. But and then we included some Steelkey Customs stuff. We also utilized their 360 distro in an unconventional way. And whenever we do have the video for that, we do talk about how we flipped it and how you shouldn't really be doing this.
Yeah.
But we really wanted to push the limit on like stuff you can get out of the box, but then also saying I can use it in this way too, as long as I factor in these things, right? So it is an upside down distro, and you shouldn't really be using it in that fashion. But we wanted to prove a point, right? That we could do that, and so we did, and it turned out really well. And
Looks great.
Yeah, it looks great. It's a fun, simple build. Just 2 radiators on this one. And normally with the Atlas 2, you can do 4, sometimes 6. We've seen people do 6, maybe even 8. I mean, it's an insane chassis, and Eric really knocked it out of the park with the design. But we are happy to use it for this build, and we hope you guys enjoy that one. So,
and keep your eyes peeled. If we do get that footage, we will be sure to make a water cooling one.
Yeah, if we get the green light to do the edit, I mean, we haven't even started an edit for that because it's kind of monumental, right? The team that would be editing it, they do have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, for sure. It's a massive video. And there's a lot you can't just summarize water cooling.
No. And we thought so much about like, doing a real true tutorial video every step, right? It's a very convoluted process.
Yeah.
It's very detailed, and so you can't just broad stroke gloss over a bunch of stuff because there are important details that you will miss, and that was something that we didn't want to do. And I think it took us like 2 days to film.
Like it was a massive video to film.
Yeah, so
just to get it right and just to make sure that we were covering all of the details, to make sure that this was like the ultimate water cooling video. Yeah.
But as you know, it's not out yet, so we're hyping it up for no reason. But I mean, we'll see. As the future unfolds, maybe we'll get the green light to edit it,
or maybe we'll just record it.
Maybe we'll see it on Intel's channel if they ever post it.
Yeah, or I said we re-record it and do another something like that.
Yeah, different one. Yeah.
I mean, we'll see how the future plays out and see what we have in store for us. Another one of the builds that we did was another kind of an old one, a slow burn, but it was mainly because we had some custom pieces, which is okay. The build is the InWin Dubili builds.
Yes.
So white and orange and silver.
Yeah. That was it was interesting choice for them in terms of like a case color, right? Orange. It's not really a color you see that often.
Yeah.
And so we can admire the boldness of going with a color that's not common as an accent color for the case, right?
it's a mid-tower case, right?
It is,
But it's
yeah.
it's a sizable case.
In terms of like the aesthetics and the overall finish on the case, I would say it's one of my favorite.
Yeah.
I wish the case offered a bit more in terms of robust options when it's put together, right? For instance, and in this build, as you can see, you know, we've got a massive 360 Alpha Cool monster radiator in the front, right? And that's an example of how much space we had in the front to play with, you know. And you're also, it may be hard to see, but we're also packing Phanteks T30 fans in there,
Yeah.
which is another 30 mil on top of the 86 mil from the Monster Rad. So that's 106 millimeters that you've got in front of the case, and we're still able to fit the 4080 Super Strix in there, right? So it's a really good example of they put a lot of space in the front, right? But then when you're looking at the top of the case, we could only really fit what we fit at the top, which was that 360 FLT from EK, and we just did the reservoir, no pump. It had been such a long time since we had done a horizontal mounted FLT on top of a case. We actually did one in a Atlas One, a Yobi's chassis, way back in the day, like in 2020. But we hadn't done it in a while, and we wanted to do it. But I also wanted to have a 360 cube tube at the top to like be an addition to the FLT 360. And so we had a little bit of room to play with, right? We threw the cube tube towards the front, if you will, of the case, away from the hardware, because we got a little bit more room up there than we did closer to the motherboard IO. But it's an interesting example of how much space we had in the front versus how little space we had at the top.
Right.
And so, if anything, it kind of goes to show the imbalance of space that you've got with this design. You know, we could have obviously put a 360 AIO at the front or at the top or something, but then have a huge gap of nothing. And I guess you could fill it with hard drives, like maybe horizontally mounted hard drives. I think they had like a interesting panel that you could do a hard drive mount with that we didn't utilize. But the design left something to be desired, and the overall finish and the case appearance looks great. It's wonderful. Really like that, the CNC billet.
Yes,
A
I will say
U
it looks.
channel.
Yeah, that part's really beautiful.
Yeah, and the silver looks great, right? It's like that diffuse, like
Yeah.
somewhat
The
dull
color
silver.
scheme in general is actually really great. It was
Yeah.
like a hit and a miss with those two color choices that it came with.
Yeah, and I mean, luckily, you know, we had a cable mod coming to the rescue with like perfectly matched cables.
Yeah.
To match the white hardware, right, with the orange accent of the case and some silver and white in there, and it turned out really well all put together. You know, we did some custom paneling in the back because, you know, to go along with the pattern of leaving something to be desired, the panel grommets were actually black, which had and it was crazy to me because you got this bright, beautiful case, and then you've got big, ugly black rubber grommets.
When not only you don't have to even do white, you could have just done gray and it would have been fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The gray could have maybe matched some of the diffused silver paint in the on like on the front panel of the case. And not only that, though, the grommets were really unsightly, but a lot of the cable grommet locations themselves didn't really make a lot of sense. And we did feel like there were aspects of the case that they kind of just fast forwarded on. I think the main goal of this was to make a flat packable case that was aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
Right? I get it. But there are definitely some design oversights that could have been addressed, I think, in maybe like a V2. Just make it a little bit more clean in terms of like the final appearance. Obviously, you know, it's hard to tell with this build, but it's because we filled it up as much as we could to get rid of those cons, right, from the design. And, you know, like a vertically mounted Strix card fills up a lot.
We did the mirrored acrylic back panel.
Yep.
Yeah, to match. That actually matches the grill design.
Yeah, the matches the front of the grill
which is
design.
really
That
cool.
that was a very painstaking thing to do.
But that filled it in really nicely, and it's honestly a detail that might be overlooked, just looking over B-roll of it, because
I know
it integrates so nicely, and that mirror effect really bounces off the hardware so nicely. So
it literally covers all of the back paneling other than the motherboard. And then, you know, we wanted to do that to make sure that any unsightly aspect about that panel was covered. Like it was to us, I'm sorry, InWin, but like to us, it was that unsightly, right? So we wanted to cover up everything. But then our plan already with the component choices that we had made was already the plan to cover up as much as possible, right? So we covered up our own work with the custom panel, and that's okay because you know it's a build that requires you to look closely, right?
yes.
And I think it's a really good build versus like a far from good, good from far, right? Like we wanted a build that is really good up close, right? Not just from far away.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're definitely ready to tear that sucker down and do some more.
I know I need that
hardware.
that card. Yeah, for sure. Another project that we haven't even posted by the time.
No, we haven't. You guys you might actually see this first before it goes live on Instagram,
which
would
is
be a first.
Crazy to think about. It will be the first time that ever happens.
Yeah.
But the TryX Luca, we're a little late to the game, but not on purpose.
No, not on purpose. We wanted to do something special.
Yeah, we wanted to do
different.
something cool.
So the main kicker here is our sponsor list with this build, right? So this is a ORS sponsored build along with TryX, obviously, and our friends at Noctua.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for sponsoring this build, because this is our first time getting sponsored by Noctua on a build. So this was a really cool thing. We wanted to kind of celebrate that a little bit and just do things differently.
Yes.
And with the layout of the Luca being what it was, and with the radical aesthetic design that it has, we wanted to emulate a bit of that thought process with the layout of hardware that we implemented for the build. And so ORS had sponsored their 4080, their master ORS card, and it is massive. I mean, other than the Strix, I would say this is the biggest card we've had to deal with yet.
Oh, it's ginormous.
Yeah, I mean, as you can see from the B-roll, you know, we relocated the GPU, right? And so this, we actually designed a prototype 120 bracket that can mount to a fan or whatever a 120 mount, wherever a 120 mount would be. It is a perpendicular mount, right? So I should actually say it's parallel.
Parallel,
so
I would say parallel.
The card parallel to the 120 that you're mounting it to. It's not perpendicular.
Yeah.
And so we wanted an ability to. I mean, obviously we've done a GPU relocation build in the past, right? So like Leanly does offer a relocation kit for some of their O11 Evo cases, right? But it is a very integrated design. It's baked into their own chassis design, right? You couldn't really take that bracket and put it in any other build and have it just work fluidly. And so we wanted to make something a bit more universal so that we had more options for our own builds here at the studio. So we designed this prototype bracket, and it's fully adjustable, right? Because it needs to be, especially for a card like this. It's a very tall PCB as well as length, right? So we wanted it adjustable to account for different height cards. And as you can see, I mean, it took up basically the entire side intake / exhaust, however you want to have it. And we did do a teaser post on Instagram.
We did. That actually riled up some feathers.
It riled up quite a few people because of how we had the fans oriented for the photos, right? So we basically just did like a stacking mock-up where you had the case with the fans, and then the case with the fans, and then with the bracket, and then the case and the fans with the GPU installer on the bracket. So you could see like
step by step.
Step by step,
Yeah.
the evolution of what this brings to the design, right? And we had the fans oriented so that it's pulling air out of the case. It's an exhaust. It's not an intake. And then we put the GPU in, and people are like, it's like fully backwards. I don't even know what you guys are doing. Like, you guys are clowns. Like, it was crazy. And
talking about how we're gonna burn up the GPU.
Yeah, and it was, you know, you got to think about how the GPU, like step back and think about it real quick, because this is like a great conversation topic, right? So if that card were to be mounted in a motherboard in a traditional pattern, right, mounted to the case's PCI IO slot, right? Maybe you've got some bottom fans intaking into the card, right? And then the card, since it's not a blower style, it blows it back kind of into the rest of the case. So you do need proper ventilation within the case to expel that, right? But then you do have 120 fans at the bottom of the case as intake, right, to feed that GPU. Well, it's the same thing, except the fans are oriented as an exhaust. Most of that card's design is a straight through design for the giant air cooler that it is. Like, the PCB for the card doesn't go nearly as length as the cooler does, right?
It's significantly smaller than the.
So you're looking at the card, it's pulling air in, and so you've got the Noctua fans behind assisting that card to get the air out of the case rather than having it cycle back into the case with only, you know, the exhaust out the top. And it was kind of surprising at how many people didn't put that together. And just because we relocated the GPU doesn't all of a sudden change the thermal design of the card itself. The card's still wanting to pull air through it, right, as an intake and out the top or the back of it, right? So that's why those Noctua fans are oriented in the way that they are. And then the card was so long that it actually, and this is not something that I was thinking about, I knew the mount would work, right? I just didn't think about how long the card was. And so once the card was in there, it's like, oh man, we can't put a 360 at the bottom like we had originally planned. So put some really old EK 240s out of storage and just did a dual 240, right? I mean, it's a CPU only loop. It's the Ryzen 9700X. So it's not like it's going to be making crazy heat.
Yeah.
It's essentially a 480 millimeter radiator at that point, right? With two 240s. So it's more cooling than the majority of people out there, like with a 360 all-in-one.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's fully sufficient for what it is. The airflow pattern makes all the sense in the world. If we wanted to get trendy, we would get a damn fog machine and show you, but we just don't feel like jumping on that train. But it makes sense, right? We've got the IO fan as intake. We've got the bottom two Noctua fans in a pull configuration on the radiator, bringing in air. Yes, it might be a bit heat soaked with the radiator, but that's okay. We've got top exhaust fans, and then we've got the rear three exhaust fans. So we are playing with a bit more negative pressure than positive, and that isn't ideal. We do understand that. That being said, with the hardware configuration, it is not like mission critical to have positive airflow, or I'm sorry, positive pressure within the case based on the airflow configuration. So we felt fully sufficient for the hardware, and it brings about a completely different take on a build within the Luca L70, right? Because we haven't seen a build with a fully relocated GPU. And people were asking, oh my God, what kind of riser cable are you going to use for that? It's a 600 millimeter.
It's a giant, long
riser cable that Lean Lee had sent long time ago for an 011 build, and we had an extra one, so we utilized it for that. And you can get a 300 millimeter riser cable. It's out there. It is a thing you can buy. So if you want to do something like this and relocate the GPU far away and still not really be stressed about performance, you can absolutely do that. So let us know if you are interested in that bracket. You know, it's not something that we were initially thinking about, but we do want to finally release our MNT, which is a very similar design for pumps and reservoirs and stuff like that. But yeah, let us know if you guys are interested in that. And so yeah, hope you guys like that build. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that they will.
Yeah, I think so too. And I still need to take photos and post it on,
I know
on
it's so
socials.
weird doing things and like
It's a bit backwards, but
yeah, the more you add onto your plate, the more you're like literally just shuffling things around and timelines don't make any sense. Like I was thinking about if you have to shoot content after this, like you have to go change your clothes and then
I know, right?
shoot content, and it's just such a weird way of doing things.
Yeah, I mean, I am very much enjoying the workflow that we have got. Right now, it's a bit jumbled up and kind of crazy because CES is coming up.
Yeah.
And we've got some project builds that we are working on that we are going to be talking about a little bit later. But the workflow for that has changed up a little bit of how we're doing content right now, at least for the month of December. So it's a bit backwards, but that's okay.
Yeah, but that's okay. So last week we did get in some new Phanteks products, the Eclipse G400A.
Yeah,
which is
super cool case.
a really awesome case. Honestly, one of the best parts of it is it's a $99 USD price tag.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of computer hardware component prices have been on the incline as like the past pattern for the past few years, you know, I'd say. So it's really nice to see that now Phanteks is thinking about, hey, let's make it more affordable a bit.
Yeah.
And
along with the fans that come with it too are these like budget they're like a more budget version of their D30 fans.
Yes. And if you were to get them, if you were to hold, you know, a D30 versus these fans in comparison, you would notice the feel right away. I mean, you do get a three pack for $30.
Yeah.
So it is a huge jump in price from these new value D30 fans versus the official D30s, which I think is like 3 for $90.
Yeah, but they still are aesthetically pretty.
Yeah,
really good
they're
looking.
great.
Yeah.
You know, from a distance, you couldn't even tell that they're not the legit D30 fans.
Yeah.
And they're a great aesthetic from the get-go. And I think the aesthetic of the G400A looks great.
Yeah.
But there's quite a few things that we can talk about with this case. You know?
Yeah. I mean, one thing is with one of the things they had in mind when designing this case was making sure that I had space for all of the GPUs. We obviously don't know the size of the 50 series. I can't imagine them being any bigger than the 40 series cards.
God, if they were, that's terrifying.
Terrifying. But if they are, or if they're not, which they shouldn't be, this case will be ready to store whatever card you want to put in it.
Yeah. And with that, there's a small caveat, right? Like, there's a few caveats to this case. The first one being, you know, we're talking about GPU size, right? And length not being an issue. But with that comes the restriction of you can only really put fans in the front.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do like a crazy water cooled build, it would be a bit tough in this regard because, you know, if you were to maybe find the slimmest 140 fans on the market, in terms of just like hypothetically speaking, if you were to get the thinnest 140 fans out there and then maybe the thinnest 140 base radiator out there, and I can't even really think of one off the bat. You know, XSP makes their 22 millimeter thick ones.
Yeah.
AlphaCool makes their ST25s, but I don't know if their ST25s are actually 140 based. But even then, if you were to find the thinnest fans and thinnest radiator, I still don't know if it would fit. And even then, you know,
I just don't think that Phanteks had water cooling in mind when it came to this case.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
It has this beautiful, you can see right next to it, we have the Glacier 1360 AIO that matches the mesh of the CPU cooler head. Matches the mat. Yeah, the mesh of the front grille on the case. So this is definitely one of those cases that they made with SIs maybe in mind, where they're going to be selling tens of thousands of units. But that being said, like kind of to touch back on the point that John made, is these components are expensive nowadays. So to get a case, a really nice case, Phanteks doesn't mess around.
Hey, baby girl.
Hi, do you want to come here?
Good girl.
Good girl. Oh.
It's I would like to snuggle right now, please.
Because it's FOOD time.
It's dinner time. Okay.
But anyway, Phanteks doesn't mess around when it comes to designing. I think that they make really nice products. So to get that price point at under $100, and also those fans at that price point.
I know, yeah, you get 4 full 140 fans and the case.
It's a direction that I've actually been really excited that Phanteks is taking for a while now. So it might not be a water cooling case, but I am.
No, but you know what? This case would be perfect with
what?
The new Battlemage GPUs from Intel, because those are going to be basically budget killers for the competition. Intel's really bringing their A game to their new Battlemage GPUs for the price. And we could probably put together a really cool budget build with this case and a Battlemage GPU.
That's actually a good idea. And also, we'll say you hear a lot of things about the new Intel CPUs. One pro about the new Intel CPUs is they don't run very warm, so they don't need a ton of cooling too. So
you could absolutely do a Core Ultra like 7 or 9 in this build with a 360 all-in-one, right? This same one with like a Battlemage GPU, and you could probably have a full budget build. I mean, off the top of my head, I know the Core Ultras could probably go down in price a bit. The competition is just too tough right now, in my opinion. But if you were to get a Core Ultra 5, right, that's $300 as of filming. With the Battlemage, you figure $250, so that's $550 right there for those 2 core components. The motherboards maybe a bit. We are going to get, I think, the B860 motherboards, I think, are coming out in the next 3 months or something like that, which are the rolled back spec versions of the Z890 boards. So you don't have to pay Z890 pricing for a setup like that. But you could definitely get like around $1,000 build in this case.
Right.
And it would be a killer build for some gaming.
Yeah. One thing that we also really liked about it is how lightweight it is.
It's insane.
It's insanely lightweight.
Insane.
And that, like, again,
but it doesn't feel flimsy.
It doesn't feel flimsy. It doesn't feel like if you, I don't know. It just feels, it's nice to pick up. It's easy to move around. So again, great for people who are building tons and tons of these.
And there is one aspect that I do want to talk about, because it's something that we've seen in quite a few cases now. In just the past 6 months, we noticed it in the Montech King 95 Ultra.
Yep.
And then we saw it with the Asus GT302, and we're seeing it with this one. And it's a very specific issue. And I say it's an issue because it restricts compatibility in terms of your rudimentary, let's throw a 360 all-in-one at the top and just be done with it, right? Say you wanted to water cool and you wanted to use a medium-sized thickness radiator, right? Something in the 45 millimeter thickness. We're not even talking about, a 60 mil. 60 mil is really not that common in terms of what radiators people are buying. So let's talk a 45 mil radiator, right? Which is the current trend right now, 30 millimeter thick fans, rather more so than the 25 millimeter thick fans. So you're thinking 75 millimeters at the top. Well, the issue that I'm referring to is the placement of the 360 mounting mechanisms, where these case manufacturers are putting them and where they reside over the motherboard. They are locating these 360 mounts right over the IO of the motherboard, more so than towards the front of the case and further away from the IO motherboard. And we got some B-roll to kind of show you what we're talking about here. But if you were to get a too thick of a radiator and too thick of a fan combo, it's literally in the way of the motherboard. Like the motherboard is now in the way. Your I/O shield, the top of your board, like God forbid your dual EPS plugin is right there too. You straight up can't even do it. It is spec'd just for an AIO with 25 millimeter, maybe 30 millimeter fans at the top, and that's it. There's no other real options for you to do with that. And I don't know why they did that, especially because, you know, and we were watching the Gear Seekers build video with this, and you could see it in their finished B-roll. Is you can see there's quite a sizable gap between where the top radiator sits and how much gap there is between the glass panel. It's kind of sizable, and I don't understand
what the point of all the dead space is
Yeah.
when you could have just made a slight
You could've-
design difference.
Yeah, you could have brought
change
that whole
to-
radiator towards the glass, and then you're not worried about your Z height. So you can have the radiator in front of the motherboard, but it's no longer an issue. And they literally gave us one row of a 120 rail essentially, and they could have done three, in my opinion. You know, and that's not unseen. You see that all the time with other cases.
But we have been seeing, which is the reason why we're bringing this up, is we have been seeing this more often. We have been seeing this design flaw more often. It's not just a Phanteks thing. The Montech case had it. I think that there were 2 ASUS cases that had it.
Yeah, the 502 and the 302 unfortunately both suffer from this. I mean, that's why, you know, when we were talking about the Easy Fit kit and the 302, the radiator was too big, and ergonomically it was impeding with the motherboard, and so we had to use our own bracket to pull it towards the glass and away from the motherboard. So it's, you know, this case is doing the same thing, unfortunately, but you know, it's why Elliot said, I think this case is really geared for an SI type
AIO
case where,
setup. Yeah, for sure.
Low budget type customers, high volume type case to be manufactured and sold. Nothing wrong with that. Honestly, love the aesthetic. They really did a really cool like surface modeling inlet on the front facade underneath the grill. It's gorgeous, and in my opinion, it's probably one of the best looking cases for $100.
Agreed. I hard agree on that.
Yeah. So we're really excited to do a build on this. I'm not sure when exactly, but probably in January.
And it will just be a simple AIO build. Yeah. Just some quick content on it. So make sure you're following us over on Instagram to see that.
Yep.
CES builds.
Yeah. You know,
Let's
we've got 2 in the works right now, but we did only just get footage of 1, and it's because we're really excited about the process of what this one has been about. So again, we're talking about APNX's V1 case we're doing a build in, and so we'll throw some B-roll over to show you guys what we're up to. But as you can see, we're dealing with quite the crazy GPU setup with this build. This is a new company, Link Plus. We saw them for the first time in the pallet booth at Computex, and they had a really cool prototype on display there. With this build, it is still also a prototype. This is like a V2 prototype. Their V1 prototype was at Computex. And so with this, we're looking at a 4090 with a crazy all-in-one system from them. That you've got an internal pump that resides right next to the core of the chip on the 4090, and then you've got this crazy quick disconnect system. And as you can see, the sleeving is actually MDPCX's Riviera Blue, and we were able to get Link Plus to apply that sleeving to the all-in-one ahead of time at their HQ in Berlin, which we thought was really cool. And that is something that Link Plus is working on to see if they can offer different color sleeving for their AIO setup for these GPUs in the future. But with that came some caveats, right? So obviously we wanted to showcase their new system along with the TryX panorama setup, and we're gonna open loop that with Modding Cafe's adapter. We got their acetyl, their white acetyl adapter that basically removes the AIO radiator and tubing and plumbs it in a way that you can just do some G1 fittings on there. But as you can see, the fitment's really tight. And so we're going to have to figure something out with a fitting solution for where those new ports are at on the TryX cooler and the Link Plus setup, because the Link Plus setup is not something that we can modify, unfortunately. We were hoping that we could open loop in it, and we can't. We have to keep it as AIO, which is fine. Their 360 radiator is a bit large in terms of their dimensions. They've got a long end tank on one end and then a tall end tank on the other. And I think they made like that end tank to like match the thickness of fans that were there. And, you know, obviously it's a prototype, and we are curious to see if they change the ergonomics a bit on the radiator side of things, because with this particular case, it's a tricky pairing because we could only fit it in the corner. We couldn't fit the radiator in the bottom or the top. And as you can see with some of that, you know, there's a slight conflict of space, right? So we can only fit a 240 rad at the top, and there's only enough space for fans at the bottom. So I mean, it's sporting a Core 5 CPU, so it doesn't need much cooling. You could really get away with that 240 rad at the top. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a pretty cool build once it's all put together and lit up and everything. The color scheme we're doing is going to be green and blue, and we're really excited about it. But I mean, as you can tell, it's definitely work in progress right now.
It's a work in progress. There's some artwork that's going to be done to it, some custom artwork.
Yeah, you got these massive screens.
The
there.
Link Plus, yeah, we have, as well as that TryX cooler is going to be tons of action on that build. So
a fun little animation Ellie's been working on. So and
then our Alpha Cool, we have a build going to the Alpha Cool booth.
Yes, and that's in the ISO chassis.
Yeah, so that's really cool because it's one of our custom chassis.
Yeah,
that's going as our first custom chassis. To
Very
go to
excited about the build. I might be more excited about that one than the V1, only because, you know, obviously it's our own chassis design, right? It's one of our babies, and we'll be able to show it at the AlphaCo booth at located in the Planet Hollywood during CES. So it's gonna be really cool. It's not even really booth; it's their suite.
Their suite, yeah.
Which is cool.
We'll post the information on our Instagram for those who attend CES. If you're interested, so you can
see it for sure.
Feel free to message me on Instagram or message LiquidHaus on Instagram.
Yeah.
That's what I meant, to get the booth information, and I'd be glad to share that with you. We also have a build. Patriot is always really sweet, and they always want one of our builds to show off. So we'll bring a build down for them to show off. If you want to go look at that, obviously, please go check out the Patriot suite as well.
Yeah, we actually have a build video for that build.
Yeah.
Which is on our YouTube. So we'll link that build video in the description below.
Yeah.
Because it's the same build. We kept it. It's such a pretty build, and we didn't want to take it down yet. And luckily it was still up, and
now we can get one good run out of it, and then we can take it apart for good.
Yep, and use those parts for other stuff.
Yeah.
So.
But I want to say, before we move on from CES, huge shout out to Intel for always providing us CPUs. They sponsored all of our CES builds, as well as sending us some CPUs for our studio use, testing, stuff like that, which we are absolutely working on going into the new year, as well as Cable Mod for always providing some awesome cables for us.
We're going to be having some Cable Mod cables for the CES builds, and they're not here yet. It's probably going to be pretty last minute, but they're going to be gorgeous once they're all put together and stuff. So
yeah, it's been nice to rely on you know, brands that support us through all of these things that we do, you know?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, because let's be real. A lot of the stuff that we do, we would not be able to do without some of our sponsors' help. So thank you so much, you
Yeah.
guys. It means everything to us, and really, it's why we can keep the lights on is with your help. So thank you guys so much for continuing the support for us. You know, we appreciate it more than you know.
Yep. And we're excited to party with you in Las Vegas
I know,
next
right?
month. So.
We're very much looking forward to that.
All right. Well, I think that concludes this video. Happy holidays to everybody. We
Yeah, by the time this goes live, it's probably going to be right before Christmas.
right before
So
Christmas.
Merry
Yeah.
Christmas,
So,
everyone.
yep. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. We will see you in 2025. I swear we have so many really awesome
Yeah,
things
we've got
planned.
some really exciting stuff.
It's gonna
planned,
like
so.
next year is gonna be our biggest year yet. It's just the planning we have been doing is the last few months is just crazy, and we're really just ready to lock in and lock down. So there's more exciting stuff coming for you guys, which is great for us because we love having you here. So we want to just keep that going. But yeah,
We're definitely gonna double the amount of YouTube.
YouTube.
Clearly, we're lacking in the YouTube department.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we have to do, and so, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Join our Discord if you haven't already. The discussion there is always fun. Follow us on Instagram, Blue Sky, Hear Me, Threads, Facebook. Subscribe, like, comment to this video below or other
Please.
ones. Say nice things because we really appreciate the nice things. If you say mean things,
Not a fan.
we'll cry.
We'll cry.
Maybe.
We'll
She'll cry.
cry.
I mean, who wants to make her cry? I mean, seriously.
She's the best baby.
We love you guys. Thank you so much. 2024 has been an awesome year, and 2025 is going to be even better and bigger and more exciting. And I can't wait to share what we've got going on with you.
Yep.
Anyway.
Until then, we'll catch you on the next one, guys.
Goodbye.
Take care. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.